Welcome to Make It Stick, Fluency, Foundation of Mathematical Learning. I'm Amy Clark, and I'm hosting you today for this session. If at any time you'd like to reach out after viewing the session, please feel free to do so. I enjoy coming alongside educators and helping them to continue to develop their skills. Our learning outcome for today. In this session, we are going to identify the unique instructional needs that our students have when they're at the fluency stage in the learning hierarchy. So in order to do that, the first thing we'd like to talk about today is performance versus learning. Performance is a short-term change in knowledge and behavior. It's easily lost. It is observable and can be measured in the moment. But often students have little cognitive processing of information going on. So this is a scenario that you might run into of a student performing. You've just finished working with them, you've possibly taught them a new concept, and right after seeing the concept demonstrated by you, they can easily repeat the process or perform the process without any hesitation, any difficulty at all. And then perhaps the next day they come in and you show them a similar type problem and they have no recollection or idea how to do the problem. So we would say that the previous day when you were teaching the material that most likely that student was performing because you observed them doing the concept however you asked them to do it. But the very next day they had lost that information and were not able to repeat the process. Instead, what we are hoping to move our students toward is the idea of learning. And this is when there's an actual change in the long-term memory of our students. The learning that they keep or the learning that they have is stable and durable. You might not easily observe it at first. This information needs to be retained and transferred over time. And because it is retained and transferred over time, we can conclude that there was more in-depth cognitive processing of the information going on. If you are a visual learner, I just wanted to capture that last slide of information in a diagram that might help you sort through performance and learning. So on the outside parts of the circles for performance and learning, you can see how they differ. But then in the areas where there is overlap, we can understand that in both performance and learning, there is a change in behavior. There is acquisition of knowledge and skills to some degree, and both of the performance and learning pieces are observed in the form of an assessment of some type. So if we begin to talk about the process of learning, the cognitive process that we referred to in performance, we said that there's not much cognitive processing going on, and in learning, there's a deeper level of processing. So just to be clear about what we're referring to, in the cognitive process of learning and remembering, we have the front end of the brain involved, or the front end of learning, we have the sensory register involved. We also have the working or short-term memory involved. And then on the back end, we have the long-term memory involved. And when students are able to transfer information that they are learning into the back end, where retention is taking place, and then they're able to retrieve or recall that information, that's what we're referring to as a lot of cognitive processing going on and that durable, stable learning taking place. So how do we move students from performance to learning? We use a roadmap that we call the instructional hierarchy. This will help us to know what to look for in our students' learning. And then once we observe certain behaviors or look fors, we know which stage of the instructional hierarchy that they are currently operating in. And then that allows us to choose our instructional strategies to match their current level of learning and then move them on to that next level. To build understanding about the instructional hierarchy and stages of learning, I have a brief overview of what each stage looks like and entails. The goal for acquisition, this is when we're teaching a student a new skill, and our goal should be that they are learning how to complete the skill accurately and repeatedly without any assistance at all. In fluency, then, which is what our main topic is going to be, we are looking at having the students keep that accuracy that they gained in acquisition. However, we're trying to increase their speed of performing those skills that they acquired. Then that helps our students to go into generalization, where our goal is that they're able to apply the skill across various settings and contexts, and they're not confused with similar skills. An example of this might be if we have a early elementary student learning their addition facts, and they've been introduced to the facts in vertical format. And now, after they have had practice, they've acquired the skill, they become fluent in answering the fact in the vertical format. They are then able to transfer that into a horizontal format, or perhaps they're able to transfer and still get the answer if the addends have been exchanged, their place as the commutative property. Or perhaps they see a vertical addition fact, but we have an empty box with one of the addends missing. Because they're at the stage of generalization, they're able to take that fact that they learned and apply it to those different situations. In adaptation, we're talking more about applying those skills that they've learned to problem-solving schemas. And overarching all of the instructional hierarchy stages is the idea of we want to give our students opportunity to maintain their learning, no matter what level of learning they have acquired. So the idea of maintenance is allowing students to have the opportunity to have planned practice, purposeful practice, so that they can maintain their learning. So that's a little background in the instructional hierarchy and the stages of learning. And we'll delve more into acquisition and fluency. Again, the focus for this presentation is fluency, but in order to do that justice, we do need to explain a little bit about what it looks like in the acquisition stage, because sometimes we might have students that are doing fluency activities, and the reality is they need to be backed up to acquisition so that they can acquire the skill and be more accurate with it. So in acquisition, the instruction that our students are receiving, they're getting a lot of modeling practice, a lot of modeling taking place, think alouds, step-by-step explanation by you, listening to you use precise language, going through the planned examples that you make so that the sequencing of learning the skill makes sense, perhaps starting with something easier and then moving toward more difficult levels of application. And the practice during the time of acquisition is very heavily guided. We don't want them practicing the information incorrectly, so they are practicing with our guidance. And we're supporting our instruction. We're supporting our students through instruction by asking high level and low level questions. That gives us an opportunity with the low level questions to perhaps pull in students who might not have that confidence, but if they're able to answer a question and experience success, it helps them to be more confident to volunteer. And at the same time, asking high level questions to keep the engagement of those students that might more easily acquire the skill. Also, during this time, we're allowing opportunity for frequent responses, whether it's choral responses, thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe whiteboard responses, just so that we can gauge where our students are at. And then we can also provide them feedback by explaining to them if they are correct. If they're incorrect, we have the opportunity right on the spot to be able to correct their thinking. So again, they're not practicing the information incorrectly. Now, as we are in acquisition and we move to fluency, we want to make sure that we don't make that shift too soon. Sometimes we can tell that we have left a student in acquisition too long because they might have some learned helplessness going on. Perhaps they're content to wait for you to help them and give them an answer and provide a lot of scaffolding. And we don't want that to be the case. We want to move them on to fluency. However, we can move students too early into fluency, and then signs of that might be that the student is feeling frustrated and is not experiencing success with the fluency activity that they're working on. So our marker for when to move students from that acquisition stage and the instructional supports that we just talked about to the fluency stage is when they're given a probe or a measure of some sort. They would want to be scoring in the 85% to 90% range. They might still be slow and they might still be showing that it takes a lot of mental effort, but when they are complete or have completed what we've asked them to do, they have a score of 85% to 90% accuracy. So let's say we have a student who has made that marker of 85 to 90% accuracy. So we are going to go ahead and talk about what instruction looks like in the fluency stage. Our goal for our students at this point is to work on their speed, their automaticity, and their flexibility. So if we go back to our working memory systems, to our learning cognitive processing systems that we talked about a little bit earlier, what fluency will do for us, or for our students, I should say, is that it will offload their working memory so that they're better able to develop those more complex math skills. So when we get a student in sixth grade who is working on long division, they're not having to draw out what 3 times 3 means in that division process. They're able to automatically come up with 3 times 3 is 9. They don't have to rely on a procedure, they don't have to rely on a picture. They're able to focus on the multiple steps involved with division because that they have that automaticity with their math facts. So, if we talk about what the student might be experiencing during the fluency stage, because our goal is speed and automaticity, we're shifting from that heavily guided modeling to more massive amounts of repetition. So, what we will notice about our students is that they have a decreased cognitive load. The steps are more automatic, the math takes less mental energy, and this frees up brain space for that more complex problem solving later. We also know that their confidence is building because as their speed increases, students will often feel a strong sense of competence and success. We also notice that there's more of a smooth execution of the skill. The hesitation and pausing that we perhaps saw in the acquisition stage will start to disappear. So instructionally, as we said, that goal is speed and automaticity. So we will be fading our scaffolding. We'll be pulling back on the amount of modeling that we're doing. We'll be pulling back on the amount of guided practice that we're doing. We might not rely on the manipulatives and visual models as much. We're moving toward relying more on the mental math and the standard algorithms. So because of that, we're also going to be delaying our feedback. So in acquisition, we were immediately interrupting and fixing mistakes, but in fluency, we're giving the feedback after the practice session has happened. So whether it's students self-monitoring by checking the answers, or whether it's a whole class activity where you're posting the answers and they're doing the feedback, that feedback is delayed and is happening after the activity. Also important when instructing during this particular stage of the learning hierarchy during fluency is the pacing and the incentives. So we are maybe introducing timers, we're introducing a beat your score challenge. We might have fast-paced math games, some things that we can offer to increase their motivation and give them many opportunities to respond and thus hopefully increase their speed. The collaborative and independent practice is happening here, whether it be a worksheet or digital practice. Students are going to get so many more opportunities to respond in the fluency stage. So we won't necessarily be seeing the I do, we do in this stage. It's more of the you do. And we're really emphasizing that simultaneous active practice where students are getting so many more opportunities to respond and they're getting the opportunity to maximize those number of responses because they are working toward increasing their speed. So this is just a visual model of what I just talked about with the instructional focus. Here we see that the modeling is much less, the practice is much more, getting more independent practice than guided practice. And we still have the supports, but again, the feedback is more delayed and the opportunities to respond are greatly increased. So, as we look to the effects that fact fluency can have long term for math learning, you can see in the diagram that the fact fluency is just a smaller piece of affecting and increasing the computational fluency. Because if our students can add their facts in the ones column, they'll be able to do that in the tens column and in the hundreds column and so forth. So that fact fluency will just really help to solidify and speed up the computational fluency, which will in turn affect the procedural fluency that comes later on when we have all the multi-step concepts, the number theory concepts, the solving equation concepts. So fact fluency is very far-reaching. If you take a look at this slide, this is just again a visual reminder of what that fact fluency, the effects that it can have. If you see over on the left, the brain is a picture of what's going on for a student who is not fluent. A high percentage of their brain is taken up for the calculation process, which leaves very little space for reasoning. That's really showing a picture of an overloaded working memory. And over on the right-hand side, we have someone who is fluent and automatic with their facts. So a lot more of their brain power is freed up to be able to do reasoning because the other part is involved with just recalling what they've already learned. So automaticity really frees up that brain capacity and reduces the working memory overload. If you would like, you can pause the video now and you can take a look at the video in this URL. You can go ahead and type that in, and that video is called Math Fact Fluency and Automaticity and the Brain. And you can pull that up, listen to it, and get even a deeper understanding of what I am talking about. So you can pause me and come back when you are finished with that video. So, welcome back. Hopefully, that video enabled you to just get a little bit deeper understanding of what automaticity does for the brain. So, I don't know how you felt about time tests when you were a student, but there's debate about whether time tests are beneficial or not. So, just a little bit of background of what we know about the research behind fact fluency. It consistently shows that fact fluency is crucial for students' overall mathematical success. Students with strong fact fluency tend to perform better in math across various areas, and that fluency is a strong predictor of performance on standardized tests and higher level math concepts. So if you would take the time, you can pause the video and type in the URL, and this will take you to the site where you can read about the misconceptions that are associated with timed tests. And then finally, just if you are watching later on the video about fact fluency and the strategies involved with fact fluency, just to give you a little preview, that has to do with the evidence-based strategies that we can use to move students from acquisition of a skill into the fluency stage. So if a fact fluency is something that interests you, you may want to go ahead and watch that session to get those easy to implement strategies to help your students with fact fluency. And as we wrap up, I just would like to leave you with a few questions to think about. As we talked about already in the video, there are some observable behaviors that students display when they're ready to enter the fluency stage of the instructional hierarchy. So just think about what are those observable behaviors. The other thing you can think about is why is fluency important for building a solid math foundation? And then during the fluency stage, the goal of instruction is to strengthen speed and automaticity. How might time tests help to achieve that goal? Thank you for viewing this video. I hope that you have found it helpful. And again, my name is Amy Clark, and you are welcome to reach out to me anytime at arclark@iu12.org. And I would be more than happy to come alongside of you and help you with your math questions with your students. Thanks for listening.